Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I have a guest with me, conductor Ludovic Morlot. Welcome to the podcast.
A very good morning. It's great to see you.
The past 25 episodes, I've had the pleasure of talking to so many people, and it's great to talk to someone whom I've actually met in person and seen in person, because recently I've talked to people who I've never met in person. So it's great to do this. The first question that comes to mind, a lot of artists are doing different things during this crazy time in the world. What are you doing? What are you busy with, whether it's musical or non-musical?
Well, I mean, the good thing for us as conductors, is that we always miss those moments where we're home because we miss the family. We miss actually, having roots somewhere in some way so that we can be working on different projects here and there. So, I mean, the first thing was to really use this time to be with the family a lot. I never say my daughters, so it's been really wonderful to be able to catch up with them on so many things. But obviously, at first I was very busy with the music because you come home fresh out of a concert and then you have many things you need to work on. So it was very easy at first, the first month, very busy studying. And then suddenly it kind of kicked in, that I was not getting on the plane anymore for a while. So then suddenly it came this thing of, okay, what do I study for now? When do I hear about these next concerts being cancelled? And so I'm need to be a little bit more strategizing about the repertoire that I'm looking at those days. But it's been in a way wonderful to have the time to reflect, and apart from waking up to this nightmare every morning, of what's going on in the world, one needs to kind of be optimistic and try to use the time as creatively as possible.
Yeah. I'm sure you've been asked this question many times, but from violin to conducting, why did you decide to make that move?
Well, it was really the repertoire, I have to say, because even as a violinist, I was really in love with the setting of the orchestra playing and chamber music, So I was much more active as a violinist already with playing in orchestras and playing chamber music than I was, aspiring to play the solo parts. So for me, violin was kind of my way to really embrace this orchestra repertoire that I love so much. And the step into conducting then therefore became very natural, is that I got more and more curious about understanding the scores I was playing, and then of course it took a little push from some of my mentors to get a chance to try, as you know, at the Piemonte school actually, where everything started for me. Where, my teacher, Charles Brook, just said, why don't you try conducting? And I stepped on that podium and fell in love with it. And I think it was more the idea of being able to master the form and structures of the music and really put my head into those orchestra scores. Chamber music was a big driving element as well, because they're all connected, of course.
Yeah. Well, stepping away from musical things, what is Ludovic Morlot doing when you're not on the podium, when you're not doing musical things? What do you do?
Well, I love reading, so I drink books, really, literally. So I love reading, and I try to stay fit. So I do love exercising. I love long walks, because those are the moments where you can reflect and plan, and actually being quite creative on walks for some reasons.
Yeah.
I love the occasional game of tennis, which is another great thrill for me. I mean, so many other things, but most of the time, when I'm not conducting, I'm home for a few days, and that's really mostly being with the family.
And you mentioned tennis. I love tennis too, and one of my all-time favorite tennis players. My all-time favorite tennis player is a French player, Monfils.
Oh, Gael, yeah, Gael Monfils.
Yeah.
I love Gael. Yeah. What I love about tennis, in a way, is that it's very similar to our profession as musicians. Not only the discipline, but also the humility towards the game, and towards trying to trying to perform better day after day, and everything that surrounds that discipline, the pre-game, the post-game, but also the attitude to the game. And in some ways I get quite inspired and mentored by those tennis players too.
Wow. So another thing I really I love asking musicians is what you listen to. If we were to open your phone, what's the last 5 or 10 tracks that you've been listening to?
Well, you'll be surprised, actually. I don't listen to recorded music that much.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I have a couple of apps I go on to and listen to curiously, as the new releases and things like that. Mostly piano music, chamber music, very little orchestral music, actually.
Uh-huh.
It's funny, but pops also. It's also what do I say? I think I listen. If I were to study an opera, for instance, I would really be immersed into listening to many recordings of that opera and voices. The thing I listen least often is actually symphony music for
Wow.
some reason. But then, I love even listening to hip hop when I'm in the gym, or so quite a big variety of things. I used to listen to more jazz, and those days are past somehow a little bit. Maybe lack of time or different time interest. I don't know, but yeah, a lot of variety, but mostly non-orchestral music. For some reasons, I love going to concerts though,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I miss tremendously on my downtime like this, because usually I'm home in LA, and the first thing I do when I have time off, I drive to the LA Phil or whatever is happening in town that excites me. So I miss the live setting a lot for orchestra.
Well, going back to music and specifically Seattle Symphony, you came to Seattle Symphony after a very, Gerard Schwartz was here, and he did so much for the musical or community here, and the orchestra from started concert hall to really bring the orchestra to a new level. But then you came in, which is a kind of tough situation to do, but you came in and you changed gears even more, and you took the orchestra to even further place. What are some of the projects you implemented with the orchestra, and what was the thought process to even bring those projects to life?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. I was very lucky to inherit an orchestra that was very healthy, in a beautiful setting. I mean, the Benaria Hall is a jewel, acoustically, but also the fact that it's right in the heart of the city made it an incredible tool for me to expand on what Gerard Schwartz had built for the orchestra. I mean, I don't really think of it, taking it further. I'm thinking more into taking it another direction, or maybe expanding some of the repertoire. I think that's one of the thing I pride myself mostly about my tenure in Seattle at the Seattle Symphony, is to have been able to open up a lot of windows when it comes to repertoire, and create, therefore, help musicians on stage being even more versatile, which we know is an incredible quality for musicians those days, because from one week to the next, and sometimes from the morning to the afternoon, you have to be so ready to shift gears, in terms of styles and um, even genres of music. So it's been really what I've been trying to do mostly, is to expand the horizons in terms of repertoire, but also to connect the orchestra even more so with the community. Therefore, creating platform for the orchestra to perform for the community in different settings, where everybody can feel that they can identify to some part of the work that we are presenting. So, late night concerts or more casual settings, in the early evenings, short concerts, but also going out into the community, for more educational work, and maybe even more community
Yeah.
engagement uh, projects. So those things have been really one of the the part of my work, but also, you know, to try to attract really, really amazing talents within the orchestra. Because, you know, I think if the orchestra sounds better day after day, it's because, you know, it is being challenged within.
Uh-huh.
You know, and I just feel that if you bring into the orchestra musicians that can inspire their peers, because it shouldn't be only the conductor's responsibility, right, to inspire. I think it is a collaborative work where you have a conductor has many satellites within the orchestra that can also influence and inspire their colleagues, and yourself as a conductor can get a lot back from those people. So I think, having had the chance to hire about 30 some people during my tenure, and many of whom were principal players in the orchestra, has really, I think, inspired every musician in the orchestra to want to push it that much further, you know. And
Yeah.
that's what you want to create, I think, in a group.
Yeah. And I personally enjoyed the late night concerts, which I think were fantastic. Those were some of my favorite moments and experiences coming to those. I know you're passionate about premieres, and I know you do a lot of premieres. Maybe if you could think back of a scary incident or something unusual that happened, if there is such a thing, and if there isn't, maybe just why premieres are important and why you enjoy it so much, because you've done many, many premieres.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, more than premieres, I'm really passionate about music that I love, and it just happens that I love exploring new music,
Mhm.
and sometimes you kind of find pieces of music or voices of composers that you want to embrace. Therefore, that, you know, the premieres are important, but you know, I even rather love even more the second and third performances, because, you know, you're not as nervous, and the vocabulary becomes a little bit more familiar, and usually they are better performances because everybody is a bit more familiar with it. But yeah, I've been always trying to embrace music of living composers that I could identify with, because I love the collaboration with living composers also.
Mhm.
It's tremendous when you can work on a score and, you know, decide that you have those few questions, take the phone and just ask those questions
Wow.
directly to the composer, which, you know, always tell me it must be very difficult to conduct new music. And I find it's the easiest thing, actually, because um, I mean, beyond the technical aspects of it, if there's something you don't understand, you can actually sit for a coffee with composer and discuss and really understand more clearly. Because you have more questions than answers when it comes to finding your you know your version of it, interpretation of it. But an incident, well, you know, I remember one that was actually quite painful, because um, we had worked very hard on a piece by Walter Boudreau in Montreal with the Montreal Symphony, and Alain Lefebvre was performing a piano concerto of his, and it was the premiere, and we had rehearsed, but, you know, during the rehearsals there were a lot of um, things still being arranged and composed, and so it was like a little different um, setup into rehearsals that I was used to, you know, because usually the piece is what it is, it gets its performance, and then it's been revised. But I felt this whole process that during that week was that the revision was taking part during the rehearsal process, which was very difficult for me to deal with. And then there was an incident during the performance where early on in the piece, you know, the pianist had a little cadenza out of which the orchestra was coming back, and I didn't recognize anything that was happening in that cadenza leading into the orchestra. So therefore, you know, we had to start again, and that was maybe very unusual, but in a way it was beautiful, because that's also what is beauty about creating music. When you read about the premieres, you know, throughout music history, many incidents of that sort, you know, or for instance, when you play a new piece that you can repeat it twice in the same evening, because then you have memory about some things you heard, and having to stop and restart kind of created that energy in a way, which some people might see as a complete flop, you know. But I thought it was actually quite nice to invite the audience into that dynamic where, you know, this is actually the spirit of creation,
Mm.
and things can, it's not even an accident for me, or it's a happy one, because, you know, you can therefore create this kind of environment where you invite the audience in a different level of perception of what we're creating, you know. So that's one you know, there's many little things, but that's maybe the most dramatic one I can remember.
That's scary. That's scary. But wow, I want to talk a little bit about your mentors and ask you about your mentors. Mentors are a big part of our lives, and they help and shape our lives and inspire us. Who are some of your mentors? And they don't even have to be musical mentors. You could mention musical mentors, but they could be friends of from other fields, really.
Yeah, well, there are many people, you know, and I mean, in some ways, I'm trying to always approach meeting new people, new friends, as that potential mentor of, you know, I try to think of a relationship in a way that you can learn something from everybody, you know. So it's difficult to just say, you know, I mean, being inspired by those 5 people in my life, and because, you know, it's bits and pieces from everybody, and that you meet really. Sometimes the bad things are very helpful also, you know. The 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 sides of in a relationship that you don't want to embrace can be very important too. Uh, but as a big picture, I must say my grandfathers have been quite mentors to me, because they've been early on in my life. They've helped me find my voice. So I suspect maybe mentorship is what it's all about, is to really create that environment where you can become yourself, right? And not only create that environment, but then embrace it and encourage you to continue in that direction. And so my grandfather's been like this. Some music teachers, of course, you know, and conductors, because they are the ones that have really encouraged me to build my voice. Like Seiji Ozawa has been very important to me. Bernard Haitink is very important to me. Well, Seiji also, you know. Um, um, James Levine, you know, for whom I was assistant at the Boston Symphony Orchestra, it's been an incredible influence, artistically. And then, you know, David Robertson, I remember, was very important also in the start of my journey as a conductor, because he not only invited me to very prestigious uh, concert settings, but also he's always kind of teased my curiosity, and I think he's, you know, he's someone I still go back to very often when I have doubts and questions and all. But, you know, we were talking about tennis. I mean, the guy like Roger and Nadal and Monfils, you know, they're in some ways they are mentors to me as well. And composers, you know, I mean, I was very lucky to meet the late Dutilleux and Boulez, you know. So people with so much knowledge, but also so much uh, humility, and people that have a very strong voice, but don't necessarily want to impose that voice on you, but just want to uh, to guide you in finding your own voice. I think is the best mentorship you can offer.
Yeah.
In return, as a, you know, I'm very interested now, little by little, in coaching young musicians, and I find often it's that idea of facing the mirror, you know, that what I've had the chance to benefit, get from those amazing mentors in my life, I'd like to share a little bit, and I find that when I teach, it's instantly what I'm after,
Wow.
is to really try to capture a little bit of the soul of the the, the, the artist I'm coaching, and rather than putting, you know, walls around it just to try to invite it to explode and become even more so what it already is, you know. And I think so I would call mentor whoever in my life has been able to kind of help me in that direction.
Yeah. Well, with you specifically, and I've had the experience to work with you. You really understand space so well, and you're able to push and let go so well. I think more than many other people. So I could really see you do this for a long time, be a mentor to many young musicians. So thank you for mentoring me. It's been an honor.
Thank you. It's been a trip.
Yeah. So actually, one thing I asked recently to another guest I had, a project, something that you've envisioned, you've had in your mind for a long time. Maybe it's in a specific country, maybe it's a specific composer, a soloist, an orchestra, some project that you have in mind you really want to do, you never had the opportunity to do.
Oh dear.
And it could be absolutely
how
epic.
long can be the list, you know? How long can be the list? Well, you know, it might surprise you actually, because it's not necessarily linked to conducting as such, because in a way I'm living the dream with being able to plan projects, you know, with orchestras that now I return to more often. So with whom I have relationships, and with soloists that I can, you know, that have become friends. So I think more and more in my life, when it comes to conducting, I'm in control of creating those projects, you know. So it's more I would say it's things outside of this. For instance, you know, that I've never had time for. For instance, I'm always been really wanting to work on orchestration, because first of all, I learn a lot doing it, and it really takes my mind in a complete different direction. And so this I have a project of orchestration that I've started years ago that I've never really completed, and so I'm using this time now to actually try to put my mind into those kind of projects. You know, composing would be kind of the extension of that. You know, I think if one day I become really comfortable with the orchestration, and then some ideas kind of, if I have enough of a clear mind, you know, away from doing concerts actually, which is being forced upon us now, I feel that maybe that's the project I'd like to do more of. Orchestration, writing music, but also writing as generally, you know. This is something, after reading so much, that I think that I would like to translate into creating. But we know how difficult it is to start with the blank sheet, you know. And I've tried that, and it's really scary and new to me. But if that's something in the next couple of years in my life that I'd like to become a little bit more at ease with, that's something I'd like to experiment with.
Wow. And I know this might be a tough question, but I've been asking people a life-changing moment, a musical life-changing moment, and a personal life-changing moment. And I know there are many, but maybe if the first couple that come to mind.
Well, I mean, you know, the likes of conducting the Berlin Philharmonic for a few days, which happened to me 3 years ago, or, you know, making conducting debuts with the likes of the Boston Symphony or the Amsterdam Concertgebouw. I mean, they're life-changing moments, not because of the career opportunity, but because you realize that when you're being surrounded by incredible passionate and talented people, your learning process, your growth pattern becomes exponentially bigger. So of course, it's a wonderful thing to be performing with the Berlin Philharmonic, for instance, musicians. But what is even more extraordinary is that you come out of a week like this being inspired by really creating that environment for yourself all the time. And those have been very important moments for me, because then I would go home, or would go in any situation working with any level orchestra, and tried my best to create that environment for everybody. And so in some ways, this is very decisive moment for me in my musical life, because those made me appreciate what humility and quality can inspire, in some ways. I don't know if it makes sense, but
Oh, it's great.
But I mean, so many other moments. I was recently performing with my youth orchestra, National Youth Orchestra of China,
Uh-huh.
where we had a tour, a concert in Europe last summer, and those were some of the most powerful musical moments, that I shared with musicians on stage, because of the journey that we had accomplished together in 2 or 3 weeks rehearsing, and seeing all the pride and the life-changing elements that was brought into those performances for so many young musicians. It's something that also kind of inspires you to thrive further. So moments like this have been very important to me. As a personal life change, I mean, of course, that sounds a little cliche, but becoming a dad, I mean, I don't think you can beat that.
Yeah.
Again, for in being inspired to shift, your focus into something so much bigger than yourself, and so, it's not only the joy of being a father and being responsible for this wonderful life. It's really also, in a very selfish manner, to be able to erase a lot of self-consciousness,
Yes.
self-conscious feelings, and go back to the really the root of what is important when you study music, which is you know the composer's voice and the music that you're trying to kind of recreate and
Yeah.
find truth in. So it might sound a little cliche, but I think for sure it has been the most moment in my life. I was almost 30, and things kind of changed the whole vision and direction of my thinking,
Huh.
not only in music, but for everything, really.
Yeah. And I feel the same way, because 8 months ago, all those things changed for me too, because I became a
Yeah.
dad. So I completely understand. I completely understand what you mean. And it's not cliche at all,
Okay,
because
good.
it does change everything. You've covered a lot and you've said a lot, and a lot of these could be advice to young musicians, but coming from an experienced conductor and a musician, having worked with so many world-class artists, what advice would you give to young musicians, maybe sometimes struggling to make a career or just starting out a career?
Well, I mean, I think my it's always a little difficult when you say those things to young musicians, because they can look at you making that suggestion when you have had such a wonderful opportunity to have a life in music. um, but I think my recommendation would be to really say, for the career,
Mm.
because by itself it's the wrong approach. you know I think the focus has to be uh, aspiration, in terms of embracing the music as your life, and as a infinite platform to learn and to study, and it's like being a student all your life.
Mm.
So if you think of a career, it almost feels like it's somewhere you arrive to, which by definition is already working against you.
Mm.
Because even in the midst of having a career, so to speak, one should always have this attitude to be a student, and to embrace and be grateful for those opportunities you have, but yet pursue further your learning process. So my advice, I mean, there's, depending on what you do. I mean, if you study the violin, or if you want to be a conductor, or if you want to be a singer, all those advices can be very different. When it comes to conducting, I just find that it's important to live your life as well as in tours, and because what inspires orchestras often, you know, is this combination of incredible musical and technical skill and abilities, but beyond that is that vision that transcends the 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 the, the collective setting, meaning um, not only your readings but your traveling experiences, your everything that you've been searching for in your life can be incredibly inspiring for through your voice, through the coaching of an orchestra, for instance. So often I see young musicians really only living their lives with music, and that can be possible, but yet adding so many other things outside of that. And I just feel that even when I go back to when I was younger, as a music student, this was surely something that I would have told myself today, is to, to expand your life environment so much more than music, and your music becomes stronger, becomes much more focused actually, if it becomes one thing where everything outside of this kind of goes back into. And so I don't know, it's difficult to summarize, but for me often I find that it's true for any field. You think, imagine if you're in a sporting career, and the only thing you think about is sport, or be inspired by sport. I think it just limits your ability to become a champion, because you see the real champs actually are very, very integrating all the different elements, into science, everything into what you do. And this is I think that kind of builds more layers to what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's great because a friend recently asked me, said, you've talked to 100 people at this point with your podcast. What's an underlying theme? What's something that everyone has said? And it's very similar to what you said. And I talked to Evelyn Glennie recently. I've talked to so many other people, and all of them say that you have to look beyond what is just in front of you. If you just want to be a percussionist, you can't just look at wanting to be a world-class percussionist. You have to look way beyond that. And it's great to see so many people who have accomplished so much talk about the same thing. There must be a formula.
Well, I think it's also because we have this chance of thinking of ourselves 20 years ago, and maybe imagining how we could have grown quicker, and learn some lessons much earlier on in our lives, and to embrace the world really, and everything available to make your voice grow stronger.
Well, last question. It's a bit of a tough question, but a lot of people in Seattle absolutely love you and everything that you've done. And I know a lot of them felt really sad when you left. And like you said, you've built such an incredible thing over 8 years. I think that, you've done so many projects and built so much and hired so many musicians. It almost feels like a world champion is leaving without a loss or even too many more opportunities. Why?
Well, I mean, it's a good thing, isn't it, that people are sad about not being there anymore. I much prefer that feeling than the other way around, And it was part of my strategy too. I have to say that I would be able to live when I felt that I delivered all the energy, ideas that I could possibly create in that time frame, and then ultimately things in a setting become the same setting after a number of years can become a little comfortable. And comfortable is not a friend to our profession, right?
No.
So you want to be thinking about that. There's a great way of thinking of a relationship between a conductor and an orchestra, I think, is that, you know, it always starts off as a honeymoon, because, you know, if they invite you to be serving as their music director, that means there is that special chemistry, right? And everybody's really hungry for what your vision's gonna be, and then inevitably you come in, and to achieve that vision, you have to be very rigorous, right? And a rigorous leader is not necessarily someone that people would love for very long, right? So inevitably, from that very strong chemistry, then you make demands, and then the synergy kind of comes down a little bit. The wave comes down a little bit. And it's funny because it kicks back up the moment that people realize that all this work is paying off. And then pride kicks in, you know, oh, we've been working really hard. It's been very difficult. There's been tension even, you know, but look at what the result of that whole work has been. And it's been wonderful, because I've been able to live through that journey with the Seattle Symphony musicians, and to live at a time where I felt that wave was going up in so many ways, because people felt that the orchestra was playing better, that the houses were full, that, you know, there was real pride in what the Seattle Symphony was accomplishing as an organization, that there was a real connection with its community, that there was even international recognition about what was being happening in Seattle with the Seattle Symphony. And, you know, where do you go after this? You know, you either embrace another wave down to hopefully come up even stronger, or you repeat yourself. And, you know, I think it's very important, therefore, that if I had this opportunity to expand the repertoire or the vision in a direction, and we felt that we push it to that direction as far as we could possibly do, that I offer those musicians an opportunity to embrace a vision where they can push that vision, that another vision into that same, with that same strength, you know. Therefore, I think, you know, then it becomes an incredible group of musicians if every decade, every 10 years, you can have embrace a vision that takes you even further into a different direction. You know, it's like having then traveled the world, you know, rather than having always been back and forth between the two same continents. And it's not a tough question. It's actually one that I feel very strongly about, because that's also how I see what an orchestra can give me, you know. It's a back and forth, and I felt like I don't want to be coming onto that stage feeling that we've already done that, we've already been there. And you know, it was important for me, therefore, to step aside rather than step out, because, as you know, I'll be going back there as a conductor emeritus. So there's a whole platform for us to continue exploring the projects that we've started exploring together, but with a different relationship. And I think that can be even more powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing. I don't think we could end on any better note. Do you have anything else to add before we end today?
No, I mean, I have to say, it's really nice to see a familiar face on Zoom. You know, I just, those 8 weeks without seeing anybody, sharing the music with anybody, is to see you, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day. Take care. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Off the Podium. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next episode.